wanted to talk about structures in business. You know, Gary and I see a lot of you across the RDLC, and we see some of the growing pains. And it's been a really good market over the last 2 or 3 years, especially take out the little COVID bit for most markets. And I think every market's kind of come back anyway in the last kind of 6 months. But there's been some really good times. And actually for the IT sector and others, I think the market's been good for a very, very long time. And we've said this for a while. But the one thing we've noticed is our sub 15 group is expanding all the time with businesses, but the kind of major players group of 50 plus isn't. And we see a lot. Gary talks a lot about going from 5 to 10 to 15 to 9 to 7 to 11. And there's these kind of growing pains of why you can't break that ceiling and get past, 70% of all recruitment companies in the UK are 10 people or less. And we don't want to be average, right? And not all businesses right for growth in headcount. There are some very niche businesses there that do extremely well with small numbers, very big search kind of placements, etc. But in general, you grow a recruitment company, you grow your heads because you grow your internal talent teams. And there's got to be something there where people are too much in the business rather than on the business. And they're in the business doing things maybe they shouldn't do. And maybe it's just structural issues that they've got. They think the business is right, it grows quickly, they win a big contract, and they start to see the cracks and the weak parts and the bottlenecks in their processes. So we wanted to cover a few little different areas, just very briefly. And so if you take notes, if there's any areas you really want to discuss further, we can open it up and throw out some questions to the floor. But when we put the postcard out, I'd put it out as structures: hierarchical, divisional, team, organizational, network, support, financial, technology, and advisory. And I think all of these areas are important to understand in your business to make sure that you're not putting in processes that kind of stifle you, that bottleneck, that aren't scalable, which is hard to tell right at the beginning unless you're stress testing and load testing all of your models. And when I talk about hierarchical, I'm talking about the standard drop-down organizational structure: CEO, senior leadership team, middle management, everything. And there's a lot of pluses to that. It's well known, it's easy to understand, it offers career paths, it's promotional, but it can also be quite big and wieldy and can be too bureaucratic in terms of getting things signed off. And we've seen it with businesses that have been acquired by other businesses. I mean, even if you take like Vincere going to Access, talking to the guys at Sourcebreaker, just the embedding of going into Bullhorn, which is obviously a much larger company, things take a long time to turn around and happen, which you used to be able to be quite snappy at. A lot of businesses I've seen running flat management structures where they essentially don't have much in the way of middle management. They have a more transparent kind of model where everybody understands the collaboration and they understand in terms of their values of what their requirements are in terms of their teams. But maybe you're not seeing that career structure. What is my next move? Where can I go? If I've got everybody's on the same level, how do I know that this person is going to be someone that I'm going to be better than or be kind of rewarded over and above? Am I going to go up the chain? So there is a lot of benefits to that. I took a hierarchical model and flattened it out, not totally flat. There was hierarchy for decision making, but essentially everybody interacted in the same way. Spoke to my receptionist the same way I spoke to my chairman. In fact, I probably spoke to my chairman far worse than I spoke to my receptionist. But there's a lot to be said for having a flatter structure in terms of transparency, collaboration, project-based work, that type of stuff. The other one I put down was divisional. And you can break that off into geographies, skills gaps, areas. And that's good when you're a larger business, I think. A bit like the S3 model, it gives you flexibility, but you can see a lot of duplicity in terms of how they're working, a lot of internal competition, eating of each other's pie. So you need to make sure your processes are right and you're still getting the economies of scale out of that large business, but you have them off in divisions, which gives, I suppose, individually those groups the kind of progress that they're looking to make within your business, promotional, that type of stuff. But you've got to be careful that you're not duplicating. So they're the main kind of, I suppose, standard organizational structures you'll see. There are in companies in America, mainly in the tech area, that they look at these team structures where they work on scrums, and they're a lot more fluid, they're a lot more reactive, they're smaller units. But again, hard to see where your clarity of goal is within that business and how you take that forward. And you can have a matrix, you can mix these up, right? You can put these into a model where you've got different people working in different teams, you can second skills from one to the other, but you can't do that unless you've got your standard operating procedures down and you know what the foundations look like, because it becomes unwieldy and it becomes super, super complex. But then they're the types of structures that I'm going to put forward today that maybe you want to discuss a little bit in detail. Some of the models that I've seen move on have been like what I'd call network structures, where you're plugging in with other businesses. You're looking at, we've got Phil on here today, the BPO side, where you've got teams working overseas. So you've actually got this network base of individuals working. Some of you bring in, change management to just deliver on a project, or maybe if you're doing an SOW, you're bringing interims that are still part of your business, but they're contractors. And you might have JV partnerships with your clients. Your clients are going out to deliver a project, you're providing the human capital, you're creating a JV. Now, for me, that's a network. You leverage each other, you leverage our suppliers that we've built as a group of recruitment CEOs. That's leverage of the network. So sometimes when you're putting your structure together for your business, you're growing your structure and you're trying to get out of being in the business and on the business, it can be hard to then hire the talent to get into one of these divisional or team or hierarchical structures to give you the foundations you need. Well, the quickest way is to leverage your network. Okay, and that's what the RDLC is all about. You've got a network of individuals and skills and processes and suppliers that you can leverage to springboard yourself and then fill in with the talent you require. And I've seen a lot of success in that in some of the businesses that I've worked in and grown. Some of the people that I've done advisory for, I know, speaking to Gary, he's done a lot of that, creating network growth in businesses to then build structures out. So there's some clever kind of quick fixes there, but you've got to have the plan down and you've got to set those processes out to make sure that actually, as you grow, you're not going to crack, right? And you don't end up back in the business rather than on the business. Next one. So if you're just taking notes, if there's anything anybody wants to say in between, just pop it in the chat. I'm going to race through these so we've got time to get coverage on the points that you feel are more relevant to you guys. Support, your front, middle, back office, your finance, your management, your CRM, all of the support networks need to be in place. And for that to work, for different parts of your business to work, you need to have really strong communication lines. You need to have accountability. Now, I've seen that in businesses that have grown too fast, or not too fast, but fast. Is there too fast? I don't know. If your structures are right, I don't think there is. Where there's a loss of accountability and responsibility. Now, for me, I always used to introduce races into that type of growth that we had in a business, and that was responsible, accountable, consulted, and informed. So everything run a project, because what you'll find is you've got HR and you've got contracts and you've got finance and you've got all these different things, and all blaming each other because something hasn't been done. And you don't care whose fault it is, you just want to fix it. But you need to be able to go down that accountability line. So if you're pushing for a project, yeah, Stephen, I'll mention that again. You go for a RACI, RACI. Very, very basic. There are different forms of it that take in other kind of areas, but it's the most basic one. Responsible, accountable, consulted, and informed. And you've got someone on all of those parts when you're delivering on a project. And from that, you'll be able to see from your support that sits behind your organization, is it scalable? Is it something that's repeatable? Because you want people to come in. Gary talks a lot about industrialized processes. It's something we've both done in our businesses, that if you've got something that's repeatable, it's really easy to onboard people, right? You need something that's resilient because you've load tested it and you've got that support network in place. And then you want something that's replicable, because as you grow and you open up offices all around the world and you go to this divisional model, you need to be able to pick it up and know with the nuances of that domain that it can continue to work as it worked for you before, because that creates efficiency in your back end. If you've got lots of models working in completely different ways, that's the inefficiency in your business, and that's going to cost you a lot in your back end. So your desk cost is going to go up, and actually your profitability is going to go down. Financials, we beat the drum on this all the time. I speak to so many businesses and they talk about their P&L, or they're just doing cash accounting because they've got money in, money out. And that's fine when there's 1, 2, 3 of you and you're a perm business. But if you want to grow your business, your first thing is your cash flow, your balance sheet, then your P&L. So many board packs I've seen when people said, oh, what do you think of my board pack? And there's no cash flow in there, right? And if there's no cash flow in there, I don't know whether or not you can sustain growth. Is your ID facility big enough? What if you won £1 million a month contract next month? Could you do that? What would your bank, how quickly would your bank react? Are you in a good position where your bank's going to put that through credit and make that happen? Have you got a fast cash dippy pot where you can go in and excel for certain projects? And you need to be on top of that. You need to be looking at your 3-month rolling, your year on year. You need to be looking at your Forex, especially at the moment. If you're funding America from the UK and you've just put new boots out there in the US somewhere, but the money is actually coming from the UK, you're 20% down, right? And yet you've also got rising inflation there. So you're probably 10-15% over your cost base that you thought you'd be, and you're 20% over in terms of your Forex as well. So these are things, these are the sensitivities that you need to understand in your finances, where your cash flow goes up and down. You've got rent to pay, VAT to pay, NI to pay, all these things to pay. Your P&L looks lovely, but you've run out of cash. And that's what suffocates your business. So make sure you've got your cash flows being done properly. And even if you've got your own accountant, you've got your own FD, always find someone else to run their eye over it. Because if you miss something on your cash flow and you don't forewarn your bank that something's going to happen, they will screw you. I've been in that position before when joining a business, switching over the FDs, Dan coming in, and the bank sticking 11% on 30 million quid worth of debt. It's horrible, right? Because you're amortizing so much, you're throwing off not enough cash to pay your debt down. Whatever that scenario might be, you need to be in a position where you understand it. Right, because there's other ways that you can move cash and make cash appear in your business. And if for any of you working with Dan Ermson, you'll know he's pretty good at making cash appear from nowhere at times. But a saying that Gary and I have coined a long time ago is, a pound saved isn't the same as a pound earned. Okay, because you can only save so many before your business is restricted and the oxygen's gone. So make sure you've got your financials, your stress testing right. If I won a contract, it was $1 million, it was £1 million. What would that mean to us in terms of financing? Because look, if you can't get your ID up to scratch, you could go out, you could do alternative financing. There's lots of other ways to do it, but you don't want to do it in 7 days, right? Because you will get pulled down in terms of your rates that you will pay will be onerous. Another one we talk about a lot is technology, just making sure your technology stack works. In my history of doing that with my businesses, a couple of times we've looked at CRMs, we've load tested them to 50, 60, 100 people, and found they look amazing when there's 10 or 20 on you, but then when you get to bigger numbers, they bottleneck and they have problems. So make sure that your tech stack is suitable for your business. Don't just get every bit of tech and expect it to speak together and work together, and integrate and all API, because it might be the wrong workflow for your business. There's certain markets that certain tech works in, it doesn't work in others. If you're putting bricklayers into sites, you don't want to be buying loads and loads of LinkedIn tech to do scrapes. You probably want to be on Facebook or something. So there's always going to be those differences and nuances in markets, but unless you map your procedures, understand your structure, and can plan out your business, you're not going to know which size fits you. And the last one I'm going to do, and just go over it, is advisory. I'm a big believer that a lot of you get huge amount out of the organic stuff that goes on within the RDLC network, within WhatsApp. So many amazing things I see put on there. Gary and I rarely need to pop in and say anything, because it actually gets worked out. You're on the coalface every day. You see it far differently than we will see it on a daily basis. We can see it in its totality. We can talk from experience, and we can interject and give some advice. But essentially, that information helps you make an informed decision. That only goes so far, because it's little bits, it's snippets, it's how long you want to read a text for. Some of it goes offline, I get that. But also, if you are looking to grow exponentially and you do understand your structures, what you look like now, what you're going to look like in 2 years, and what you want to look like at the end, then it's a good opportunity to sit down and find the right advisory, the different areas that you feel maybe you're weak in or you don't understand. Get that right person or people on board, and that will bolster you and give you that kind of foundation that you need. Because working on the boards and having my chairman, who was a serial entrepreneur and a big name, and I got 2 things from him in 7 years, 2 bits of advice that I found worthy. My other non-exec, who was sat on the from the private equity, from Baird Capital, very pragmatic, level-headed, you know, I think economist, accountant by trade, but been working in PE for many years. Again, I probably got more from him, but because he was measured, because he was unemotional about stuff. But in all of those years, if I got 10 things from both of them put together, and my other kind of industry Ned as well, I'd be amazed. But 2 or 3 of those things paid their salaries that we paid them many times over for that whole period of time. And from, you know, just one or two comments, and, you know, we saved £360,000 on swaps just from an intervention from my chairman, right? So if you get the right person, sometimes you think, oh, am I getting anything this month? Or, you know, and then the shit hits the fan, that's when you need them. But if you haven't got them on board and they don't understand your business intrinsically, they won't be able to give you the right answer. They'll be able to give you the answer that they see from the information you give them, rather than the build up of process that led you to that position. So things can mushroom quite quickly. So getting the right advisor or advisors, I think is a really good thing if you want to exponentially grow. If you just want a good business and whatever else, you know, you might be happy with the RDLC, but and just that peer-to-peer interaction. But we're really keen to we were talking about the other day, just see this sub 15 group get to the 25s, the 35s, the 40s, the 50s. Because for us, you know, we love to see that success. We've seen everybody do well, but we really want to smash, you know, our peer groups outside of this network out of the park. So look, they're the areas that I've gone over. Hopefully you've taken some notes. We can put that in chat. Gary, do you want to jump in and add something?
What do you reckon? I'm back from 17 weeks on holiday. I feel very charged and buzzed. So good luck to everyone who's working with me. Look, I think you said it brilliantly. There's a couple of things about this. Try to get to 10 people doing 12 brands average. Cost per desk 6K. You're making 6 grand per person. At 10 people, you should be making 720. So 6 times 12 months. Get to 100 people, you should be making 7.2. The problem with that is trying to find 360 recruiters in this market is really tough, and trying to keep them. Remember, it's so much easier for the recruiters in their own rights to actually get a pay rise by going to somebody else and actually working through your processes to earn that promotion. So the kids are actually just getting to a point where they're not worth the salary you're currently paying or they can get elsewhere. This combination of a 180-360 model does seem brilliant. So effectively, if a recruiter wants to go and find their own work and deliver it all by themselves, then they get paid 100% commission. But if you've got a proper BD machine at the front end, so you've got your automation, you've got a BD person just trying to sell up, they've got a QA person to make sure people aren't wasting time on shit roles, and you've got the right information coming in, you can actually win chunkier and chunkier projects all the time, which means people aren't chasing their tails doing 1s and 2s. If you get people lifting rocks and placing 4s and 5s, it's so much easier. So in just terms of just operational efficiencies that help you get sustainable growth, this combination of 180-360 seems to be the best way forward. It also affords you the opportunity to build out, once you've got your model, right? So if you've got your dashboard absolutely on point, so you know what good looks like, but you can also spot a disaster or a car crash coming quicker than anybody else. If you've got your best practice absolutely on point, and you work in a true meritocratic environment whereby the best people are given the best opportunities, not people who've been there longest. If you can get that, you can use this one model. And then remember the interview that we did with Simon Arbin, who just said we basically divided and conquered every year. So at least one new division every year. When he had 10 other businesses and I'd had mine, I had to do 11. So we had to promote people really quickly. And then we got to that whole positioning of teams and divisions. So the model that you started with doesn't happen to be the model that you will ever end up with. So you've just got to be agile and work with the moving parts that you've currently got. I also think that there's a lot of people who are persevering with markets that sometimes you just, I do worry that if that isn't the right market for you forever, why are you knocking your head against the brick wall? If there's easier money and easier opportunity out there, chase the checkbook. And that's, again, a very easy way to do some really hyper growth. Making sure that you find the time to work on the business, to go to school on some of these models. But it was no surprise that outside my door at S3, we had the legal department and the finance department and the colouring in department, right? So the legal, obviously, I got this all the time because we were trying to do things and we were running over old people on the streets. Every time I ask anyone, or they come up with a strategy that anybody I'm working with, and they say, look, I really want to add 15 people as quickly as possible. One, I generally want to know why, but two, the very next call is to Dan Urmson to price it and forecast it. So based on current history, not what you think will happen, but what has been happening over the last 26 weeks, how quickly can you get these people up? What's your churn rate going to be? What's it going to cost you to hire? And is that the right way to do it? The other thing, just about, again, trying to be sort of brutally honest about operational efficiencies, everyone should know their baseline today. So what it costs to generate a vacancy, what it costs to generate a placement or a candidate. You should know what it's costing you in terms of technology investment. And then you can actually plan what you expect people to get to. So if you're doing a deal and a half, by spending the extra money, is it realistic and feasible to ask people to be doing 2.5, 3.5 deals? Now you've got a remote team, you've got better tech, and put yourself on that trend line, and then bring it down to 12-week SMART goals to make sure that you're on the right path. So, and if you remember some of the infographics we got where we talk about shift rights, this is very, very akin to that. So your startup, so it's Sally startup, Gordon growth, then it's Liam lifestyle, Gordon growth, and another exit. What we're trying to do is put people on that path. So whether you're a startup or you're a lifestyle business, get you into the growth phase as quickly as possible, so that the 15s and 10s and 15s businesses will become 30s and 50s, and the 50s will get to 100. Getting to the first 100 staff is the hardest job you'll ever get. The second 100 feels like a piece of piss because you've got the infrastructure, you've got your support devices, you've got your toolkit, and you've got your methodology. So get to that first 100 people as quickly as you can. Cheat, lie, steal, run over old people, whatever you need to do, but make sure you've got really good tools in there. And if you've made a mistake, brilliant, suck it up, go again. Suck it up, go again. I wish I could tell you that I've never made a mistake in business. Oh my God. But, I would generally say I've made more better decisions than I've made absolute shockers and howlers. And, it's like George Soros says, you never need to sell it at a high or buy at a low. You're just doing lots of good things all the time, and sheer force of momentum will get you where you want to be. And also getting great advice. Having, even if it's just a contract FD, who speaks with you once a month, or someone you can just tap into about a bit of advice, absolute game changer. We know Phil's one of the biggest reasons why Phil just took off. He just took on a full-time FD. He just changed his life. So yeah, there's lots of different ways to do some of these things. There's a really cool board pack that we did, which is just about operational efficiencies. And it talks about 3 of the best, 3 of the worst things. And it's quite important that you don't confuse your sales board pack with your financial forecasting documents. It basically it's too much for one meeting when lots of people don't really care about all of those things. So just give the right people the right information who need it. So just don't overwhelm people with too many facts and stats. So salespeople and sales management need to know the sales numbers and expectations your finance people, maybe your main board and your directors need to understand the financial forecasting. You probably want to have, obviously, your top team as well, look at the ROI that you're getting from all of your tech infrastructure, so you don't just keep burning money on the wrong things. Because sometimes, you know, you save yourself 2 or 3 grand a month and you put it against something else. So if it doesn't work, suck it up and just change it.
Yeah, I was just saying in terms of the numbers, like Gary said, there's going to be different numbers for different markets, temp, contract, perm, what you're doing. But your board pack in terms of your finances, your cash flow, your balance sheet, etc., they're going to be pretty much a much. It's just your movements will be different in terms of how your cash flow moves, in terms of your facility requirements, your ebbs and flows of how you account and you do your accruals. So that will change, but again, that's something you need an accountant for. So it's pretty standard. If you've got an accountant or an FD, they should be able to put the board pack together for you pretty easily. You've just got to make sure that you're tracking the right metrics internally as a business, so that you're feeding the right information into your actual finances as well.
Yeah, can I mention something as well? Some of the businesses that I'm working with at the moment, who are getting triple digit growth, are all going contract first in everything they do. Being a better time to build out a contract book, and the revenue that generates is just mind blowing, especially in the economy. Businesses want to have an agile workforce, finish projects. We're sitting in a state of fear, uncertainty, and doubt, and it's just a really easy way just to win projects left, right, and centre. So if you can be contract first in all of your outbound BD, you'll win projects for fun at the moment.
Have we got any more questions? Or anybody out there wants to talk about some of the points that we've raised, or give us an opinion on them?
That default position, when somebody in a 360 model hasn't got an abundance of jobs, what are they going back to do? Are they going back to spec a candidate out to understand the market, to know the right people? And I think in a tight vertical that helps. And when they're just, say, partnering or going after an area like tech startups or whatever, it's very ambiguous. So just to pick up on what you said earlier about the divisional stuff, and growing divisions and growing teams around divisions, is that something you think we should all be doing now?
Well, John knows my opinion, because I think that the days of the niche, I think you just sound like a bums on seats recruiter. And if the default area is everyone's quiet, we go spec some CVs out, I just don't think it's the right way forward. I just don't think it's long-term sustainable. Whereas if you've got a list of organizations, you don't want startups, but we want scale-ups and hyper-growth.
Yeah.
Relationships with these organizations. On contract, it might have taken you 30 calls to get to the point where the guy said, fuck it, all right, your appetite for us is insatiable. I'll give you a go. Here's 4 roles, and I fill 4 within 30 seconds, and I get another 8. And that it was about building relationships. And I do think, if that R word hits our sector, specking TVs just never works. It's all about, have we got any relationships with organizations? Whereas I do think you can see the growth more, but I don't think it's a question of putting bums on seats. Getting more from fewer, using tech over talent, being super, and that's where we're getting the best rate of growth, and aligning to a world where there's so much money that's been invested, and so much more money to be invested in be it salespeople or tech people. It's such a great opportunity. Even if you wanted to go back into one market and do it in the UK, absolutely fine. But again, you're very heavily concentrated on one location, which is very common. But I reckon you could make 10 times as much business working out of London than you would out of Birmingham.
Yeah, but we still go. It's almost like we're still talking earlier on about the hardest thing is to grow from 0 to 100 people, and then on the other side we're saying it's not necessarily bums on seats because tech can do it for you. So there's got to be that balance between the two, right? So I still think there's room for that, just maybe not uber niche. Just wondering what your thoughts are on that, really. So it's a significant vertical rather than just a vertical.
I think everything's got a compromise, because no two businesses are the same, and what works for one management team won't work for another one. And is your training aligned? Have you got the right tech stack to do that? Have you acquired the right data to do that? But once you define, this is who we are, this is what we do, then you can actually align everything else to make sure it actually works perfectly for you. You get all those the great efficiencies and price savings. But the only thing I would say is that I'm not a big fan of compromise, because it makes you shit at two things. But just have a definitive plan. But I've got to say that, I mean, it also for me, it's I just get fucking bored of doing one thing. I know that Trevor says be famous for something, but actually being famous for partnering hyper growth organizations, and during that period of time, you might find yourself 2 or 3 absolute unicorns who are going to throw you 600 or 700 placements a year. Now that's fucking brilliant, but you'll never find it if you don't go looking for it.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll just add to that. I mean, I think the thing is, when you get to a certain scale, you look at all the biggest businesses there are out there, they cover a lot, right? There's no one who just does data or cloud or whatever their markets will be. They're quite generic in terms of where they are and have different divisions. But below that, you will have this cascade down where you end up working a vertical and an area, because that's how big businesses saturate the market, because they're not after the biggest of billers. You can get to that 180 and they work in certain segments so that they are really just rinsing everything out of that little part of the market as possible. But I think you need a certain level of scale to do that, to have those people there, because obviously you're just, that pie is that big and you're carving up the pie ever smaller. So you just naturally end up in a position where you might have a smaller vertical underneath a bigger area, underneath a division. So you kind of get that. But early on, you don't want to pigeonhole yourself too much, unless it's a specific new niche market that actually there's very few players in it and it's scalable and you're going to get a head start on it. I mean, we've seen so many businesses that say, right, we're going to do this technology. And when you look under the bonnet, they might be known for doing this area, but they're doing loads of stuff. Then what the perception is versus what goes on is generally quite different.
Dean, do you just want to talk about just finding cash to go out and acquire?
Sorry, did you say finding cash?
Find some cash down the back of a sofa and to go and buy in a business.
Yeah, look, I mean, I've spoken to mainly most people on this who I've spoken to directly, because it's not something everybody wants to shout about when they're doing deals and stuff. But depending on the scale of your business, we did the whole million EBIT to the bottom line. Now you can add 1 million EBIT to your bottom line in 12 months, but depending on the scale of your business, if you're the average recruiter, you're going to spend much more than that to get that 1 million in that year, because it's just everything's got to start and get traction and grow up. If you want to scale quickly and make more profit, and the more profit you make and the bigger you are, the more attractive you are to other acquirers and businesses, because there's more meat on the bone there, and scale brings higher multiples, that type of stuff. You're all probably in a position, it doesn't matter how big you are. I mean, you look at a private equity team, there might be 3 people there. They raise funds, they go out, they use that equity capital to put some in, they refinance it as soon as they can to get their money out. They then they use one business to buy another business. They look at in terms of their ID facility and things they can do with that, in terms of what's left in terms of overpayments. They piss around with things like bad debt that they put in there and then release later on. There's lots of ways that they can muck around with that cash flow and leverage the individuals within that business they're buying through loan notes, through the IOUs over a period of time. So what I'm saying is there's many ways to structure it, but there's quite a few ways to buy another business without spending a huge amount of money. We're putting money in that you can get back, and you can get the economies of scale in the back end. So that's going to go to your bottom line if you do that correctly. If they're a business, you want to buy a business that's still growing, you're not looking to get rid of these people, so it's a tickle at best. and the rest of it they're going to get in that arbitrage because the business is bigger, the multiples are bigger, the end game's bigger. So what they're taking as a percentage, they're going to get, you know, more money than if they were able to sell their business on their own. And we spoke a lot about this at the Ibiza event, and a lot of people have inquired about it as well. But you've got to understand why you want to grow. You've got to understand what that target looks like and what you're going to add to it. Senior leadership team, Nick, SLT. You want to understand how complementary that is to business. If it's not complementary at all, then you're going to waste a lot of time trying to do something that takes the eye off the ball where you are at that time. So it's got to be something that leverages you, gives you a springboard and grows you. And you could do that, you know, pick up small businesses along the way. Look for those businesses that are good businesses, good client base, but they plateau because they don't know what they don't know. They haven't got a business acumen to take themselves further. But actually under your wing, your guidance, you know, your setup, your structure, they can be more profitable, more efficient, and all of you can make more money when you leverage that for sale. So finding cash in a business can be done, right? There's various different ways of doing it. There's alternative lenders, there's banks will recapitalize, you can use ID facilities, loan notes. There's lots of things that you can do to structure a deal. And for anybody who's been through a deal would have probably seen a mixture of those structures anyway. But there's no reason why you can't do the private equity model-esque type thing yourselves in a smaller way to get to a bigger position. So was that what you mean, Gary, around about that sort of stuff?
Who would you go to as first instance to cash?
Sorry, for cash?
To see what you could actually potentially raise.
It's a bit like anything. If you were going to buy a house, you've got to know how much the house is, what the loan to values are out there, and so that can be just because sometimes you don't need to raise any money, right? You can put. We've seen loads of MBOs where people have bought them out and they're paid off over 5 years, you know, and that just comes from spare sweep on cash flow to pay off loan notes and pay them down, or they have convertibles to get equity at the end when they sell the business if it's not all paid down. So you can do it without any cash, but you essentially, you want to look at what cash is in the business. You'll work out the working capital that's required to maintain the business as it is at that point in time. You look at how you're going to expand and grow that business. You'll do a lockbox calculation for the amount of cash required, and you can generally use some of their cash to pay them because they get it out at a lower tax rate than if they took it as dividends or as income. So they're winning on that anyway. And you can then leverage them on loan notes if there's not enough equity capital from yourself, or the banks aren't willing to lend more than 1.5, 2 times, because banks aren't going to lend you a lot of money. But you'll also get alternative investors that will lend you more. But you just got to work out your debt profile, who's subordinate to who on the debt profile, because the banks won't want to be subordinate to anybody else. So you really need to look at the type of business you want to buy, what their finances and cash flow looks like. Okay, if they're not on top of that at all, it actually can work in your favor. If their debtor days are really high, that can work in your favor. And you need to look at it, and then you'll be able to structure a deal. Then you'll be able to go out to an alternative investor or a bank, or even, you know, just add a bigger facility to the new business as a whole, and work it out of cash flow that way. So it's a hard question to say where you go first for the cash, but that really depends on the structure of the deal and who you're doing the deal with and what their accounts look like in terms of what the requirement is. Thank you for turning up. There's quite a few of you today, which is good. Anything that comes out of this, you want to talk to Gary or I or put on a group, just do so. And we'll see you at a lunch very soon. See you all.